7 baits, $26. That is what this whole lineup cost at the time of research. About the price of one Megabass Vision 110 hanging on the pegboard at $24.99. And right now, some guy is standing on a bank babying a $16 lipless crankbait, keeping it out of the exact stumps and grass where the bass are living, while a kid 40 yards down the shoreline drags a $2 spinner straight through that cover and bends a rod. That is not luck. There is no secret fish-attracting plastic in the cheap stuff. Bass cannot see your receipt. They respond to depth, size, speed, and whether the bait is allowed to swim where they actually are, and none of that is printed on the price tag. Number 4 costs about $2.49. Looks like something you would hand a 6-year-old, and one bass angler called it truly a deadly bait. We start with the one you quit throwing. Number 1, the Yum Dinger.
When you've got a bait as successful as the dinger, you always want to try to spin something off that and make another bait with more option.
$3.99 for 8 5-inch baits. The Yamamoto Senko sits on that same wall at about $7.49. Legendary bait. Deserves the reputation, and I am not going to insult you by claiming the Dinger is an identical clone, because it is not, and anybody who has fished both knows it. The Senko is softer and has a livelier, more active fall. That softness is the action, which is also exactly why it tears up so fast. The Dinger is stiffer, more durable, and it falls a little slower and a little subtler. Different bait, different lane, and in shallow water, that slower fall is not a downgrade. It keeps the worm hanging in the strike zone, in front of the fish, longer before it hits bottom. On a tough bite, on a cold front, on a pressured pond where a bass needs an extra second to make up its mind, that is the whole ball game. And it rigs every way you fish. Texas, wacky, Nico, drop shot, weightless. The hook is yours to choose, which means the hook quality on this bait is entirely under your control. Add an O-ring on the wacky rig, and one worm survives a pile of fish instead of one. The mistake is not buying the cheaper worm. The mistake is buying 10 colors of it before you have learned one natural and one dark. One natural, one dark, one bait fish pattern. Stop turning fishing into interior decorating. The logo cannot save a stick worm you drop 6 feet away from the fish. Number 2, the Zoom Fluke.
That right there is called a caffeine shad, and that is a deadly, deadly lure.
10 baits for $3.99. This is the closest thing on the list to a whole tackle box in one bag. Weightless, it darts, glides, and dies on the fall like a wounded shad. Rigged weightless through shallow grass, it slides over the stuff that eats treble hooks. Put it on a jig head and it swims. Run 2 of them on a double fluke rig and it looks like fleeing bait fish. Stick it on the back of a jig or a spinnerbait and it is a trailer. Surface, middle, bottom. One package, 40 cents a bait. Now, is a fluke a replacement for a $25 suspending hard jerkbait? No. That Vision 110 gives you precise depth control, hard flash, and it hangs dead in the strike zone on a cold water pause in a way a soft plastic simply will not duplicate. If that is the day you are fishing, buy the hard bait and fish it well. But that hard jerkbait cannot slide through shallow vegetation without hanging up. The fluke can. That is not price-beating quality. That is one bait fitting the water and the other one not. And here is the correction most of you need. When a fluke will not dart right, it usually is not the bait, it is the rig. Soft jerkbaits must be threaded straight, even slightly off center, and the body rolls and tracks wrong instead of cutting side to side. Anglers throw them for 20 minutes, get nothing, and decide the bait is dead. That fluke did not run crooked by itself. You rigged it crooked. Keep it simple on color. Pearl and shad when they are chasing bait fish. Watermelon and green pumpkin around bluegill. That is it. Do not turn a $4 bait into a $40 color collection. Number 3, the Strike King Bitsy Bug.
You can fish it so many different ways, but a jig is mostly fished around cover.
$2.99 at Academy, about $3.49 at Tackle Warehouse. 3/16 of an ounce. Compact skirt, weed guard, inverted line tie, 3/0 hook. Premium skirted jigs on the same shelves regularly run $6 to $8 and change. This gives you a compact crawl profile for less than half of that. And compact is exactly what you want when the water is clear, the lake is pressured, a front just rolled through through, or the bass are picking at small bottom forage instead of eating a half-ounce mouthful. A big, loud jig on a tough day is not confidence. It is too much bait. But this is where cheap has a bill attached. Customers and forum anglers complain about the same things over and over. Hooks bending, weed guards that are weak or sit crooked, skirts sliding, keepers that will not hold a trailer. Not every one of them, not universally, but it is a pattern, and pretending otherwise would make me a salesman. So use it correctly. That is a finesse jig, not a tow cable. Fish it on sensible line with a drag that actually gives. Pick the hook point before you tie it on, and stop trying to winch 5 pounds of hydrilla through a $3 hook and then blaming Strike King. Around docks, rock, pond banks, clear water, and a slow bottom crawl, this bait punches so far above its price, it is embarrassing. If the hook bends, the discount just got expensive. Fish it like the finesse bait it is. Number 4. This is the one. The Johnson Beetle Spin. $2.49 at regular price. It is a tiny, soft plastic body on a safety pin wire with a little blade. It has looked exactly the same for decades. It is sold in the kids section of your imagination and probably nowhere near the wall where the serious tackle hangs. And that reputation, that kids lure label, is the single biggest reason experienced bass anglers stop throwing it. Not performance, image. On a bass forum, one angler called it truly a deadly bait and told people to reel it steady around grass and wood. Others describe reaching for it on days when the ego is gone and they just need to catch a fish. Now that is angler testimony, not a lab result, and I am not going to pretend somebody ran a controlled study. But when the same simple bait keeps getting named by people who have no reason to lie to you, that is worth more than another sponsored unboxing. Why does it work? Because it is small, it flashes, it vibrates, and it does not demand a perfect cadence out of you. No twitch pause, no rod tip choreography. You cast it, you reel it, and something eats it. Simplicity is the feature. It is also the most modifiable bait on this list. Pull the spinner arm off, and you have a plain little jig. Tear the body up, and you thread a curly tail grub on the same head. One $2 bait becomes 3 presentations, which is a better value argument than the price ever was. Here is your warning. Anglers report blades that do not turn, baits that run crooked, and, in a recent thread, spinner arms and blades coming loose. So before you make a single cast, drop it in the water beside the bank and reel. If that blade is not spinning at a slow retrieve, you are dragging a cheap jig with extra wire. Fix it or throw a different one. But if number 4 is spinning correctly, something out there is going to eat it. The beetle spin looks like a kid's lure right up until the kid catches your bass. Number 5. The BOOYAH Pond Magic. $4.99 at qualifying options. 3/16 of an ounce. Tandem willow and Colorado blades. Compact skirt. 2-0 mustad hook. It looks like a spinnerbait somebody shrunk in the wash. That is not a defect. That is the entire reason it works. Walk any pond bank or creek in the summer and look at what the bass are eating. 2-inch bait fish, small bluegill. Nothing that resembles the half-ounce double-blade tournament spinnerbait you keep chunking out there because it feels serious. If the forage is 2 inches long, that giant blade is not confidence. It is denial. The Pond Magic wins in small water, not because it is cheaper, but because it looks like what is actually swimming out there, and it gives off flash and thump in a package a pressured forage-conditioned bass will actually commit to. Downsizing is often more important than upgrading. Nobody sells that on a pegboard because there is no margin in telling you to buy less bait. The trade-off is the wire. The thin wire that helps this thing vibrate is also easier to bend than heavy tournament-grade wire. Anglers bring that up constantly. It is not fatal. You can straighten it, but check the bait after every good fish and every rock you slam it into, because a spinnerbait tracking crooked is a spinnerbait not getting bit. And no, small is not always the answer. Muddy water, big forage, aggressive fish, trophy hunting. Those days call for a bigger profile and heavier thump. Match the water, not the mood. Number 6. The Cotton Cordell Super Spot. $4.99. A lipless crankbait cheap enough to throw where bass actually live. And that sentence is the whole point of this section. Compare it to a Lucky Craft LV500 at roughly $16. The LV500 is a good bait. It is denser, it casts farther, and when you need to reach deep fish across a flat, that density is an advantage the Super Spot does not have. But density cuts both ways. In 2 feet of water over grass, a heavy lipless bait drops out of the strike zone the second you slow down. The Super Spot sinks slower and keeps vibrating at lower retrieve speeds, which means it stays up above the vegetation and stays in front of the fish longer. One Reddit angler said it plainly. He throws the cheap Super Spot into shallow cover specifically because he is not willing to sacrifice the expensive one there. Read that again because it is the most honest thing in this entire video. The expensive lure did not fail. The angler refused to fish it where the bass were. A cheap lure you cast beside the stump beats an expensive lure you protect in open water. Fish it right. Do not just burn it. Let it tick the grass, rip it free, and let it fall. That pause on the drop is where a lot of the bites happen. And check those trebles. Reviews on this bait include bent hook complaints and paint that chips. Paint chips do not scare bass. A bent hook loses your best fish of the day, and the second that happens, your $5 lure was not cheap at all. Number 7. The Zoom Fat Albert Grub. 10 baits for $3.99. A curly tail grub. That is it. No scan-worthy paint, no exotic salt formula, no pro signature packaging. Just a soft body with a tail that kicks the second it moves. Anglers stopped throwing grubs because grubs stopped looking impressive next to boot-tail swim baits and premium jig trailers that cost more per bait than a whole bag of these. That old grub did not stop working. Fishermen stopped throwing it. Here is where it earns the spot. Slow roll it near the bottom around rock piles, dock posts, and submerged grass edges. That is the lane the technique guys keep pointing at, and it is the lane most anglers skip because it is boring. Put it on a ball head jig and swim it, hop it, crawl it, or strip the fancy trailer off your spinnerbait or buzzbait and stick this on instead. One bag replaces several packages of specialized trailers you convinced yourself you needed, and a grub gives a beginner something no expensive bait gives you: instant feedback. If the tail is working, the bait is fishing. Now the honest part. On an exposed jig head, this thing is not weedless. Bury it in jungle-thick cover and it will hang, and that is on you, not the grub. The plastic can also tear around the jig head or the keeper after fish. That is the trade-off for cheap soft plastic, and it is a fair trade at 40 cents a bait. Expensive trailers usually add detail for the fisherman, not movement for the fish. The bass never asked for the extra ribs. So there it is. 7 baits, roughly $26, and not one of them wins because it is cheap. They win because they give bass a simple, believable look at the right depth and the right speed, and because you are not afraid to throw them into the nasty stuff where the fish are actually sitting. Premium lures are not the enemy. The wrong presentation is. A $20 lure at the wrong depth is still at the wrong depth. Pretty paint does not fix the wrong fall rate, and every one of these cheap baits will let you down too. The blade that will not spin, the hook that bends, the wire that folds, if you do not check them before the first cast. The tackle aisle does not care whether you catch fish. It only cares whether you keep buying. The water is where the truth comes out. Subscribe to Tackle Hank because you do not need a richer tackle box. You need better decisions.